Also, didn't you say you didn't want to use your powers because you were afraid of dying? You didn't want to use your powers for the rebel group, but you so easily fold for this man with jade eyes? Where was the romance? Where was the romantic development? They don't know anything about each other. How is this a romantic scene? I don't know. This is how Alexis describes the Spartans towards the beginning of the book. Since the Spartans were also known for having sex with anyone and everyone, okay, bisexual / pansexual icons, they had no biases about gender and usually dated, in parentheses, were slutty, with multiple people at once. It was a fad for humans to emulate their sexually free lifestyle. So, Alexis is a prude. He gets hired out by various criminal organizations and people and whatnot to burn down crime scenes, which, pause, let me pause right there. Does it make sense to burn down crime scenes all the time? No, it does not. Does that get rid of all of the evidence? No, it does not. It is time.
Now let me say I'm the biggest hater. I hate the way that you walk, the way that you talk. I hate the way that you dress. I hate the way that you sneak this. If I catch flight, it's gonna be direct.
Hello. Welcome back to my channel. I'm Jamila. This is Jamila Be Readin', because I do be reading. And today, it's time to be a hater. As much as I love talking about books that I love, I won't lie, I love being a hater as well. And today, we're talking about the worst books that I read in 2024. This is going to be a mixture of books that I thought were, the worst books, and also books that just didn't totally live up to what I was hoping for, books that disappointed me. I'm basically just talking about my 1 and 2 stars of this year. And, gotta do the annual disclaimer. Listen, this video and my thoughts and my opinions are not meant to be a moral indictment on you, okay? If you love any of the books that I am talking about in this video, I love that for you, okay? At the end of the day, you gotta do what you gotta do. Unless you're reading a book by a racist, problematic author, or the book is racist or problematic, in which case I'm judging heavily. I am. But other than that, it is what it is. You can like what you like, and I don't think that my video should sway you if you feel strongly about these books, unless I'm spitting facts, in which case maybe unpack that. I don't know. In any case, if you love these books and you don't want to hear negativity around these books, which is totally fair. It's not fun to hear people talking shit about books or just things that you love in general. I suggest just watching a different video. It didn't have to be this one. But in any case, let's get into it. I'm going to talk about these 3 books, not as much as I will the rest of the books, simply because I did make standalone review videos that are quite long for each of these, so I'll just refer you to those, but I will talk a little bit about it as well here. The first book that I'll talk about is from one of my more recent videos, and that is Blood of Hercules by Jasmine Moss. This is the first in an adult romantasy series that's very loosely based on Greek mythology. This is following our protagonist, whose name I'm blanking on right now. I really did just yeet a lot of this book out of my brain after I finished filming my standalone video, which you can go and watch. It is pretty much a feature film length video at a little over an hour and a half, but I promise you it is worth every minute because I am very funny. Not to toot my own horn. But this is following our protagonist. She is 19 years old and she discovers that she is part Spartan, which is kind of a god, but not really. I don't really know what's going on. And she ends up going to this academy, and there are also guys there. And it's reverse harem / wide shoes, maybe. I don't know what's going on. It's truly one of the most nonsensical books I've ever read in my life, both in terms of writing. The writing style is actually so egregious. I actually did feel like I was losing brain cells while reading this book. The world building was non-existent. Characterization was non-existent. All of the guys who are involved in this wide shoe situation all felt pretty much the same to me. They had their own POVs interspersed throughout this book. It's mainly in our main character's POV. I think her name is Alexis. It's coming back to me now. It's mainly in Alexis's POV, but we get their POVs interspersed, and they all kind of sound the same. They're all incredibly deranged. They're all very mean to her. There is no romantic development at all in this book, and it's just nonsensical. It's egregious. It's speechless. It left me speechless. It really did. It didn't, because I ended up yapping for like 2 hours, but I'm speechless right now. So that's Blood of Hercules. If you would like to go see my recap, I will have it linked somewhere on this video. That was a 1 star. It was. And probably the worst book I read this year, I think. Yeah. The next book that I'd like to talk to you about is To Gaze Upon Wicked Gods. I was actually rewatching my video on this to kind of jog my memory as I was getting ready, this morning. This is by Molly X. Chung. This is the first in another adult romantasy series. Man, what can I say? I mentioned this in my Blood of Hercules videos, but there's just such a problem with romantasy where these worlds just don't feel developed at all. It feels very empty. It doesn't feel lived in, and that is the case with To Gaze Upon Wicked Gods. This has also had a lot of controversy that I kind of touch on in my standalone review video, where a lot of people consider this to be colonizer romance. I agree to an extent, but this is following our main character, Ru Yang, who ends up working with this prince whose people is colonizing her people. She essentially becomes his assassin, and she uses her magical abilities to help him broker peace? ? And they fall in love, but then there's a twist at the end. I would say, if it looks like a colonizer romance, if it smells like a colonizer romance, if it tastes like a colonizer romance, it might just be a colonizer romance. And I understand that there was the twist that happened at the end. I understand, what the next book is going to be about. I think I understand where the author was trying to go with this, but the execution was just so poor. The execution was so bad that I think it truly backfired on whatever the author thought they were doing with this book and this story. It just, on all fronts, failed, in my opinion. As a romance, it failed, because even taking the colonizer aspect out, we don't get to see any romantic development. It actually literally happens off screen. There's a time jump, and suddenly they're both in love with each other. It doesn't work as like this guy who's manipulating her, because again, everything happens off screen. None of it makes any sense. It fails with the world building. It fails as a commentary on colonialism. It fails as a fantasy. Like the magic system doesn't really make sense at all. We're also presented with this very bizarre magic versus science dichotomy in this book that just didn't really make a lot of sense to me. It truly was a flop on all fronts for me, in my opinion. That was also a 1 star. The final book that I want to talk about that has a standalone video, I have more books to talk about, don't you worry. But the final book that I want to talk about briefly that I made a standalone video about was One of Our Kind by Nicola Yoon. You might be familiar with this author. She has written quite a few very popular YA contemporary novels. Everything, and The Sun is Also a Star. This is her adult debut. It's like an adult literary thriller, like a social thriller. This book was pitched as Stepford Wives meets Get Out, and man, I think that sets up an expectation that it doesn't deliver on. This isn't the worst book that I've read this year, especially compared to like To Gaze Upon Wicked Gods and Blood of Hercules, but I think this one just kind of fails in the sense that I don't know I don't know what the author was trying to do, and I don't think the author knew what she was trying to do when writing this book. It's following our main character, Jasmine, who's a public defender. She's a Black woman. She is married, and she has a son. They get the opportunity to move to this Black utopia. It's like an all-Black neighborhood that is pretty wealthy. Everyone there is Black, down to the grocery store clerk, the teachers, even the police officers, which very interesting that there are police officers in this all-Black community. But anyways, and so they get to go live there, and it's very much like a culture shock for her in terms of just like the wealth disparity, especially as a public defender. And she's like very, very social justice oriented, right? So she's feeling like some guilt at being able to live in such a like nice lifestyle and in this space where she, you know, she doesn't have to fear for her son's life or for her husband's life or for her life even, or experience discrimination. But, you know, as she's there, we slowly realize that things are not as good as they seem. And this book is pretty much just like doing a lot of commentary on, you know, Blackness and assimilation. And I just don't know where, I don't know. I said this in my standalone video, which again, linked somewhere here if you want to go watch it. But I said in that video, I think to have an effective satire, you have to like either have a position on what it is that you're satirizing, or like have deeply considered all aspects of the topic. Do you know what I mean? And it just doesn't feel like the author has really thought about this at all and has come to any kind of conclusion. I don't know. And it just, like, I just don't know what she's satirizing. I don't know. I just find myself very like confused and baffled by this book. And I like watched a lot of interviews with the author too, and it just, so much of what it boils down to in these interviews is that she just wants to have a book that makes people think, which I guess like she did do that. There are a lot of people who are thinking about this book and have very strong thoughts about it, but I don't know. This book just kind of fails to me as like a piece of commentary or like satire. So I don't know. This is one where like, if you like this book, I would truly like to know what worked for you about this book. So let me know. But I have that video up there. This was a 2-star for me. It was not a 1-star. It was, again, not the worst thing that I've ever read. But I do think that it kind of failed in what it was attempting to do, I think. I have 2 other 1-stars that I gave this year that I haven't really talked too deeply about. One is Burn for Me by Effie Campbell, which I did talk about in one of my more recent wrap-up videos. This is a dark romance book, you know. This is following Phoenix. He is basically like a cleaner for the mafia. He's like a freelance cleaner. He basically will come and burn down crime scenes for people. Again, like I said in that video, I feel like that's not the most effective method, but whatever. He does that. He also does not speak, and he wears a mask the entire time whenever he is around other people. And we also have Laura, who is the daughter of a wealthy businessman who was supposed to get married to the leader of some Italian mafia, but that man that she was supposed to marry ends up murdering her entire family and attempts to murder her and calls Phoenix to burn down the crime scene. He ends up finding Laura. She's still alive, and he decides that she is going to be his. So he saves her and brings her to his boat to take her to his own like private island or something. And it's their romance. Yeah, it was It was such a bizarre book. Yeah, it was not good. But I had fun shit talking it to people, so there is that. I don't really know what else to say. There's just a lot of baffling things that happen in this book, and I just, you know, the thing is, like, I feel like I could like dark romance, and I think I might attempt that journey next year. And if I do, I will make a video. I think I could like dark romance. I'm fine with the surrounding situation or like the scenery being dark. I just don't like the actual romance being dark. But even then, like, taking that out of this book, like the romantic development just doesn't make any sense. I just feel like so many romance books these days, so many of these authors like just don't actually care about building a romantic relationship. Like, it's just we go from a scene to a scene, and then suddenly these people are in love with each other or they're obsessed with each other, and then I'm supposed to buy into this relationship. And I feel like that was the case here. Like, I was already like not going to like this book. You know, I read it for the lulz. I won't lie. Sometimes I read books I don't like on purpose. I know people feel some type of way about that, but I derive entertainment out of it sometimes, okay? That's just me. Anyways, but even then, like, I don't understand. I just don't understand. This guy was just instantly obsessed with her. Why? I don't know. She seemed like any other person to me. And why she ended up falling in love with him, we don't even really see him being like, it's not even like a Beauty and the Beast type of situation where like there are moments of kindness in an otherwise shitty situation. So she's kind of like, well, all right. Like, it's not even that. Like, I just don't even know what's going on, man. It was wild. There was a lot of deranged things that happened. One moment I'll tell you about, I guess spoiler warning. I mentioned that he doesn't speak, and that's because when he was a child, there was a fire and he got injured in this fire where it basically scarred his face and like almost melted his mouth closed. There's like a little bit of a hole. And he so there's a moment like during a sex scene where he's like so desperately wanting to eat her out that he goes and gets a knife. He gets a knife and he just and then he goes and eats her out as he's bleeding.
Disgusting!
Anyway, that was a 1 star. My other 1 star, like, I feel the need to mention it here only because I did give it a 1 star, but I'm not gonna lie, I kind of had a fun time reading this book, and that was Get in My Swamp by G.M. Ferry, which is essentially Shrek fan fiction smut, okay? It wasn't good. Like, let me tell you right now, this book is not good. It's not good. I gave it a 1 star for a reason. But did I have a grand old time? Did I have a blast reading this book? I did. It was just nonsensical in the way that was actually like funny to me and entertaining. And I was like, man, what the hell am I reading? But like, I'm having such a blast right now. And that's all you need to know about that book. Yeah. I don't recommend it though. I don't. Let's talk about my 2 stars. These are books that like I didn't like and they didn't work for me, but they're not like awful, and I can understand why like other people would like it. I mentioned One of a Kind already. I also gave 2 stars to Woman Eating by Claire Coda. I was so disappointed that I didn't like this book. I'm kind of like half and half on this sad girl lit fic, I guess subgenre. I can like it. And I find that I usually tend to like that subgenre when it's about women of color, to be honest. And this is about a woman of color. And it involved like a literary take on vampires. And I thought surely this would be right up my alley. And also the cover is just stunning, and it's always so disappointing to me when a book has a beautiful cover and I don't like the contents of the book. This is about Lydia. She's a vampire. Her mother's a vampire. She ends up getting like some sort of internship at like an art house situation or museum, I think it is. And we're just watching her. It's like a very much a snapshot of time type of book. And I mean, we do get some like flashbacks here and there, but we're just watching her as she is living away from her mother for the first time. I don't even want to say she's like finding herself, because she really does not find herself. She meets a guy. I don't know. I think this book was just like so nothing. Like nothing happened, and I'm fine with books where nothing is happening. But just I didn't enjoy being in her head. I don't know. This just didn't work for me. It didn't come together for me at all. It was really disappointing. It is a short book. It's only 240 pages. But it took me like such a long time to finish. Every time I picked it up, like I'd read a couple of pages and then have to put it down because it was such a slog to get through. I just found it incredibly boring, which again, I like no plot books. Like I could read that. That's often a lot of the literary fiction that I read. But for some reason, this one I just found just so dull. I don't know. That one didn't work for me. Another book that I gave 2 stars was Part of Your World by Abby Jimenez. I really wanted to try an Abby Jimenez this year just because everyone is so into her. She's really popular. And I will say, this is this is a little disappointing. I thought Abby Jimenez was Latina, and I assumed that because of her last name, so that's on me. But the fact that I was seeing an author so popular and it was a woman of color, I was like excited. I was like, even if maybe these aren't like the books for me, like that's so exciting to see an author of color like getting so hyped up. And it turns out she's not Latina. She's a white woman. She's just married to a Latino man and took his last name. And that really disappointed me. But anyways, Part of Your World, I read it. I didn't like it. This is about a woman who's a doctor. Her name is Alexis. She's a doctor. The MMC is Daniel. He like owns this inn and is also doing something in this small town. She is driving past this town and her car breaks down and he helps her out. And then this just ends up being like this weird long distance relationship where she will come and visit him, and she's like, I can't be with him because I'm a famous doctor and he's just some guy. Oh, there's like an age gap. He's younger than her actually, and she's just coming out of like a really like terribly emotionally abusive relationship, and she's like a bad relationship with her family. There's just a lot of expectations on her. I can understand why this worked for people. It just didn't really work for me. I just thought like a lot of the issues felt a little contrived at a certain point. Like I can understand it, but there are just parts of it that felt a little contrived to me. And I didn't like Daniel all that much. Anytime she would talk about her abusive ex and what he would do to her, he would always end up just being like, I would never do that to you. And I'm like, why are you okay? Cool, good for you. I just don't feel like that's the way that you should be responding in this situation. And it just really pissed me off. And his issues also seemed contrived. I don't know, it was just really annoying to me. I found both of them to be a little bit insufferable, and I just didn't care that they got together. So that's how I felt. Will I try another one? I might. I know that the next 2 books in this like interconnected standalone series are a lot more popular than this one was. So I might give her another shot and see if I like it, and then ultimately decide whether or not Abby Jimenez is for me. Another book that I gave 2 stars was Shadow Shaper by Daniel Jose Older. This is the first in a young adult series. This came out like over a decade ago. And it's just about this girl, Sierra. She lives in New York. There's like some interesting like art magic happening, and like some evil things. I don't know. I honestly yeeted this book out of my brain. I read it all in like one sitting because it was a book that I was reading with my mini book club with my friends, and I saved it for the last day, of course. And so I was just like trying to plow through it and completely yeeted it out of my mind after we talked about it. But I just didn't like this one. It felt very much of its time, and I think that this book got a lot of praise. I don't want to say because it was one of the first like more diverse YA books coming out at the time, but it kind of partially feels that way. Like every time I look at the reviews, it's like people going like, I love what this did for diversity, but I didn't like this book. And I'm like, okay. Anyways, I didn't like it. The plot was all over the place. This is like one of the first instances I've had where I've read a book written by a man with a female protagonist, and I'm like, I can tell that a man wrote this. It was so weird. There was a lot of like weird comments about body and just relationships, and I'm like, this does not sound like a teenage girl. And also this is weird. I don't know why you're saying this. So that kind of rubbed me the wrong way. Yeah, 2 stars. Then The Duke Gets Desperate by Diana Quincy. This is a historical romance about an Arab American woman who has to go to England because she ends up inheriting this castle, this rundown castle, and the dude who's a duke who thought he was gonna get it didn't get it, and then he's like really upset with her even though it's not her fault, and she tries to put together some plan to like help revive this castle and make it get money, and he kind of helps her, but he's really antagonistic towards her. I hated him so much. Like, I don't think I've hated a male protagonist in a romance in so long as much as I did this guy. His name is Anthony. He sucked so much and like didn't defend any of the like racist things that his like family and circle like said about our FMC. And it was so weird. He sucked. He was so mean to her. And when he wasn't mean to her, he was like extremely horny for her. And I'm like, bro, I hate you. I hate you so much. She was also a little bit insufferable too, but I still was rooting for her more than him. He sucked. This was not good. Next is Forget Me Not by Julie Soto. Another author that's pretty popular. A lot of my mutuals like this book, and I was excited to read this one, but I did not like it. It's following Amma and Elliot. This is a second chance romance, and it's like dual timeline. And so it's dual timeline and dual POV. So the present timeline is in Amma's perspective, and the past timeline is in Elliot's perspective. And she is a wedding planner and he's a florist. And they used to work together, and then they used to date. And then something happened that broke them up, and now it's like, I don't know, 10 years later or something like that. Is it 10 years later? It's some time later. Long enough that I feel like they should have gotten over things. But sometime later, and they have to work together again for this like super big wedding that's happening. And this is the problem with second chance romance. I love second chance romance. But when this particular thing happens, it like frustrates me to no end. And that's like 99% of the romantic development happens in the past timeline. And we don't see any of the romantic development in the present timeline. It's almost all exclusively happening in the past. We see them develop romantic feelings. And then in the present timeline, they're like angry at each other still. And then it's not until like maybe the like last few chapters of the book where they decide, I was wrong, sorry. And then they get back together. Like, I want to see the romantic development happening in the present tense. I want to know why you guys should be together now, because clearly something failed previously. I don't need to see the development happening back then. Like, we can see a little bit, but I need to see why you guys need to get together now, okay? I don't need to see that in the past timeline. And it just frustrates me when this happens in second chance romance, because it's one of my favorite tropes, and I hate when that happens. And I also found both of them extremely insufferable too. They both annoyed me. And on top of the like lack of romantic development in the present timeline, yeah, this was not for me. And the final book in my worst books of 2024 is None of This Is True by Lisa Jewell. I read this for a video that I never ended up posting. It was kind of a flop. I was trying to read books by authors with the same horoscope sign as me. Apparently Lisa Jewell is a fellow Cancer. So I read this book and I didn't like it. And this book is very popular. Lisa Jewell is very popular. She's been popular for a long time, but she's having a resurgence. And I feel like I've been noticing a lot of like books that like our mothers used to read back in the day are like having a resurgence. Like Kristen Hanna, Lisa Jewell, even like Colleen Hoover, just all Ellen Hilderbrand. Like, why are all of these ladies coming back and getting popular? I don't really get it. Whatever. I read this. This is the first Lisa Jewell I read. It's probably going to be the last. I'm already not much of a mystery thriller reader, but this one also just sucked. So there's that. It's Following Alex, spelt Alix. She has a very popular podcast where she interviews successful women who have had to like work hard, or like they had a very bad start in life and like managed to succeed in life. And so she interviews them. Josie is a woman who listens to this podcast. She's a very big fan of it. And they actually happen to share the same exact birthday, and they're the same age, right? So they're out at a restaurant. They don't know each other, but they bump into each other on their 44th birthday. And Josie is like, I'm a fan. And she's like, you should basically interview me because I'm about to make something of myself. And so Alex decides that she's just going to have like this new project, this new standalone podcast interviewing Josie, exclusively about Josie. And so she interviews her and gets to know her about her story. And she has like this really like dark, weird story. And like, is it true? Is it not true? All of these things that are happening. And she has like, she's in her husband is like significantly older than her, and they got together when she was a teenager. So there's a lot of like gross, like dark things happening in her life, but also she's painted out to be like unreliable, like a very unreliable narrator. And it was very readable. I will say I read this really fast. It was like compulsively readable, but I didn't like the twist. I just thought that it was, I don't know. Like, I don't really know what it was trying to say at the end with the twist. It felt like it was almost painting the victim as a villain, even though, like, she is doing bad things too, but then making it seem like her husband/abuser was this innocent, nice guy this whole time. And I'm like, that's a edophile. But anyways, it was weird. I didn't like it. These basic white, wealthy women domestic thrillers are really not my cup of tea. Like, I'm just reading this and I'm like, bitch, I do not care. And also, I don't really like what it was saying at the end, even if unintentional. It was just weird and left a bad taste in my mouth. So, in any case, those are the books that I didn't like this year. Those are my worst books of 2024. Let me know what your worst books were. I'd love to know. And I'll catch y'all in the next video.